Welcome to the Cutting Edge Convention, a worldwide movement to revolutionize your life. No more stumbling around in the dark, wasting precious weeks, months, and years trying to figure it out on your own. Get ready for valuable innovations and strategies. And now, here's your host, Marcy Peters, the Age Backward Mentor.
Hello, and welcome to the Cutting Edge Convention, innovations to revolutionize your life. I'm your host, Marcy Peters, the Age Backward Mentor. I help smart, successful men and women just like you step into a life that you love and a body you love being in. Today, we're talking relationships, and we're going to tell you exactly what the barriers to love are in relationships. And so I have two amazing experts. They're a couple, Antia and Brody Boyd. And I want to first tell you about them, and then we'll jump into the topic and hear from them. So Antia and Brody Boyd met at a workshop in Hawaii and have since been helping thousands of elite single women all over the world fearlessly attract high-quality relationships with high-quality partners. Antia studied personality psychology at UC Berkeley, and Brody has a degree in communications and interpersonal relationships. They have spoken on hundreds of stages, such as Google, and as well as radio shows all over the world. They have been married for 3 years. Antia and Brody, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so glad to be here. Let's do it.
Yay! I'm so glad you're here because relationships are so important when we're talking about health and happiness. Relationships and connections really affect absolutely everything in our lives and how happy and how healthy we can actually be. So let's first hear from you, your story. How did you get involved and become so passionate about this topic?
Yeah, my favorite thing to do. So Marcy, I grew up in an emotionally absent household in Eastern Germany, like an unconscious household, I would say, where, my mom was disconnected from her emotions, narcissistic. And as a consequence, I just really learned that my needs will never be met. I remember I was 18 months old and I was trying to crawl into my mom's bed, and she rolled over and she said, "Stör mich nicht," which means don't bother me. And that was the guiding message that I took into my life at such a young age, knowing I'm not safe. And I better become Miss Independent so I never, ever bother anybody again. And so as we all develop coping mechanisms, mine was to say, like, I don't need anybody. I'm fine. I'm good. But unfortunately, that meant that I attracted a lot of emotionally unavailable men into my life who were very incongruent inside of themselves, because I was incongruent inside of myself, because part of me wanted the love and wanted the affection that I never got from my mom. And the other part is like, why even bother? You're not going to get this anyways, right? And so this is the same kind of man that I was attracting into my life. And how that looked like was, I was told I was the always wanted, never expected miracle. And oh my God, and I just got so enamored with the idea that, that I could introduce him to my parents and it's going to be so great and my friends will love him. And I had this whole big picture only for it to be crushed again. And him not calling me back, him just disappearing off the earth, or simply saying, Antia, I don't think we're a right match for each other. Even a few days earlier, he was all over me. So it always came really unexpected. And I became so hyper vigilant and my anxiety just went through the roof, because I just said, okay, I just need to catch every little blind spot and every little thing that somebody says or doesn't say, so that I can pick up on it, so I don't have that devastating experience again. And so, Marcy, what I did was, I always tell my clients, if you want to have massive results, you got to take massive action in your life. And my massive action step was to, get myself into UC Berkeley, literally leave Germany behind and study, personality psychology, attachment styles, and really understand how the dynamic I had with my mother directly translated into the dynamic I had with men.
Yeah.
It just like boggled my mind. I just couldn't understand that. And, you know, along with that, studied a lot of other seminars, workshops, read all the books, spent $10,000s of dollars to the point that I became such an expert that I started to lead support groups and workshops because women are like, wow, you have this wealth of knowledge. And how women like you walk down the aisle. I was even a maid of honor for some of them. And, you know, and ironically, it wasn't happening for me. And I think that's when the worst fear hit me, that there's inherently something wrong with me personally, nobody else, because system works, formula works, right? But there's something wrong with me. And that's when I realized that I have blind spots that I don't know, you know, I don't know how to heal them and how to overcome them, how to even find them, right? And that's when I hired a mentor for myself who helped me to be vulnerable. We're going to talk about this today, you know, to be vulnerable without the fear of being weak, right? And how to set boundaries without feeling guilty and like trusting myself, not waiting until, you know, the water boils over, but to actually set boundaries right when something feels slightly uncomfortable without feeling guilty and truly trusting myself. So in just a couple of months, I met this really handsome guy here right next to me. He just like popped out. And literally the first day we met, he told me right away, he was like, see, what happens is when you become congruent in yourself and you dissolve all the blind spots, the conflicts you have inside of yourself, you attract somebody who's just as congruent inside of himself. And Brody trusted himself so much that he told me right away, within hours, that I'm the girl of the story.
Yeah, as I said.
Thank you so much. What about you, Brody?
Yeah, so my journey is actually really beautiful, I think, when we met, because I had such a similar journey as Antia as well in my story, because I grew up in a household where I felt controlled by my mother, and I felt like she always told me what I could do, what I couldn't do, and always also took away the power from my dad as well. Coming from a loving place, but it was really like keeping me in this golden cage where I was comfortably miserable. We talk about that a lot with our clients, being comfortably miserable, but not happy. As comfortable and safe, but not happy. So then I worked on breaking free, taking massive action, and I got into college and broke free of my parents' influence and started working on myself a little bit, read a couple books, and then got into my first serious relationship. And I was with this girl for about 2.5 years. We were together. We had our ups and downs, but after 2.5 years of being together, she decided to leave me, and she dumped me. And partly it's because I wasn't able to really open my heart. I still hadn't gotten past a lot of those childhood wounds, and I wasn't able to be the man that she needed and she wanted me to be. And so when she left me, I was severely devastated, depressed. I felt like I screwed up. I wasn't being the best man I could be. I really didn't understand women, what they wanted, how to be a good communicator, how to be strong and be vulnerable in relationship. And I entered this super deep depression where I was severely depressed for about 1.5 years. And when I was in the depths of my depression, I actually remember one day I was so just gaping black hole in my chest. I actually started thinking about maybe I should just end this and kill myself. And I started actually thinking about that. But then what happened is a stronger part inside me said, no, like, okay, you can do that. But what if instead you did whatever it took to never, ever, ever have to feel this way ever again? And that's when I started this journey. Just like Antia said, I took massive action. I started diving all into this. We're like, I'm going to treat this like a professional. I'm going to just master this area of my life, dating and relationships. I'm going to get it handled once and for all and not suffer anymore and not repeat these old patterns over and over and over again. And so I started reading hundreds of books on the subjects. I switched my degree. I got my degree in communications, interpersonal relationships. Like we said, I went all these different workshops and seminars, spent tens of thousands of dollars as well trying to master this. And it wasn't until I hired a one-on-one mentor, because it just still wasn't helping me to connect with people I want to be with. I hired a one-on-one mentor for me, a dating coach, and he took me under his wing and showed me what I was doing wrong, what I needed to do differently, helped support me, keeping me accountable to taking the right actions, seeing how I was screwing things up that I didn't even realize because I couldn't see it for myself. And that's when I finally started breaking through and finally having authentic, powerful connections with women and being able to understand those dynamics and masculine, feminine dynamics and in those interpersonal communications and on a deeper level. And shortly after that is when I met the amazing Antia. She popped out as well. in Hawaii. We were both living there at the time, and yeah, we met at a workshop that we were
and
at.
I had this huge hat on. I was like, how did you
Why
even
we do
see
that.
me? I was like hiding under this hat because I had a bad hair day. You know?
Yeah. And it's beautiful because we both worked so much on clearing out our own barriers to love that when we finally connected, because if we hadn't done that, we would have drove each other crazy. We would have it never would have went anywhere. And we, even after meeting each other, even with all the support we had, we still had little stuff that was coming up that was starting to create little residuals of barriers. But we were able to clear that out as well because we had done all this work and had the coaching support. And that was allowed us to have this authentic bond that I feel so blessed to have, because I feel like we support each other, we're connected on all levels, and we also have fun and do things in the world, but we're also wanting to make the world a better place and be inspiring for our future children and our relatives and our friends and our family of what's possible. And we see that as possible for all our clients as well. So become the inspiration. Like, master this area of your life so you can inspire future generations. You can inspire everyone you know and show them what's possible and just create a better life and a better world for everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing, both of you. I already feel inspired hearing about your stories, and we haven't even gotten to the topic yet. So our topic today, barriers to love. What people are doing without realizing they're doing it, because if they knew, then they could change and shift it. And so that's what we're doing today. We're creating this awareness so that you don't have these barriers to love, or at least you're aware and you can work with them and start to shift them so that they become not barriers, but you're available to bring in the love that you want or to make your relationship better. I think it can apply either way. So let's jump right in and get started. What do you see as being, first of all, the biggest barrier to love?
Absolutely. Number one, Marcy, is that whole story around vulnerability without weakness, right? And because I just spoke about this at Google, because there's this common misconception that, when I'm vulnerable, I'm saying I'm weak and I'm smaller and I'm less than, and, and I'm prone to be attacked, right? And versus to actually really see as vulnerability as a polarity builder, because we're really going into the archetype of the inner girl that Brody and I will always talk about. But also number two is to really be visible, to actually be congruent, because, when you're resisting vulnerability, like, number one, you became on the outside masculine, right? But it's actually very incongruent, because on the inside, you're not masculine. You're this inner girl who hopes to be saved and who hopes that somebody sees her light, and that somebody sees how much joy and how much passion and creativity she has inside of herself, but she's not seen. And so as a consequence, she attracts the complete wrong man into her life over and over again, because she has this outside shell of, I'm masculine, I got it all together, I don't need anybody, right? So I think that's definitely a big one. And then number two, we always say, what resists persists. And, I forgot who said that, but Carl Jung, yeah. So you draw more of that, what creates shame, what creates embarrassment into your life, versus using that as an accelerator for massive manifestation. That's what I did. Like, I realized when I clicked and I realized I'm leaning into feeling uncomfortable and saying, yes, I actually need hugs more, and I'm actually more affectionate, right? And it's kind of like to take it or leave it, right? And just really standing behind what I need, regardless of how I feel. That's when the shame, the opposite of shame is exposure. So that's when things shift, right? So that's why I see definitely vulnerability as the number one blind spot that those strong, independent, elite single women have, where they have this like, oh, heck no way. I'm not going to make myself vulnerable.
Yeah, thank you. Can you give us some examples of how to start to be vulnerable and how you can actually do that successfully?
Yeah, so Marcy, one really good example in our Find the Right Man Clarity sessions, what I see over and over again, I've done over 500 of those by this point, maybe even 600, I stopped counting, but is that, as soon as I hear women share something vulnerable or something that would normally, like, it sounds much more angry, or it sounds much more causing grief and sadness, something devastating, after that they laugh, they chuckle. right? And so that's like number one, to just be like, whoa, why did I just chuckle? That was actually not funny.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that tension, that uncomfort, that awkwardness in my body that I just wanted to release, right? It's basically like a physical resistance. The body wants to literally get rid of it, right? And of course, it's shame. And to really see and instead become curious. And I realized after this of several women who really like, okay, Antia, tell me every single time. And they had a breakthrough at the end, right? At every time. And then they actually noticed it and said, oh, I just chuckled. Wow. Oh, what I was noticing was, I wanted to just leave my body right now because it became so uncomfortable, because it reminded me when I was 4 years old and, this abuse happened, or, my parent yelled at me, right? And I started to feel like I'm inadequate in this world, right? And so that's definitely one powerful example and one easy one. It's not easy, but it's simple. That's what I want to say. Mm-hmm. It's a simple one.
Mm.
Okay. So are we talking about being vulnerable and honest with yourself or with others too?
Yeah. I mean, it starts because when you're honest with yourself, then you would catch yourself automatically, right? So it always starts with yourself, because when you're willing and able to see your own worst fear, feeling of inadequate, of not being good enough, of not being loved, whatever that is, of being too much, too intense, right? A lot of women come to me, they're like, I'm too much, I'm too big, I'm too loud. When you're willing and able to be with that by yourself, you automatically attract people into your life who love that about you too. Or you share that and you don't care how they respond, because you have already accepted that inside of yourself. So you don't need anybody. That's what I learned from Brody. When I met Brody, he could care less. I always told him, oh, see, my girlfriend likes you. And he could always care less because he had given himself already approval. So he didn't need that from the outside. He's like, yeah, it's a nice addition, but it doesn't really do anything for me. I know that. I have to keep knowing inside of myself already.
So it sounds like self-acceptance goes hand in hand with being able to be vulnerable, because no matter what you are experiencing or feeling, you're just accepting it.
Yes. And even if you can't accept it, to be at the very least curious about it.
Okay.
To just be like, let me just be a researcher. I can't quite accept it because I don't really know what it is or where it's coming from, but let me just research it. Let me just be open to it versus closing, right? Like normally resistance is like we close it up. Judgment is a closing up. Curiosity is an opening.
Okay. And you also mentioned leaning into your feelings and your needs. I really like that too. That sounds like a good entry point as well.
Yeah, I have a story there too. A few years before I met Brody, I was dating this guy. And, one day he told me, you really hug a lot. Like you need it's like you kiss too much. And in that moment I had a breakthrough and I said, yes, I do. Right. And that's who I am. I'm very affectionate. And then out of the sudden he realized, see, it's about the emotion that we have, the relationship we have to the emotion side of ourselves. And when the people realize that you have a confident emotion and a confident relationship to being too much or being too whatever, right, then they respond in a confident way as well. So it's almost a test, right? Are you backing up your actions? And then they will back it, because what happened is that he just told me, oh, no, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, it's great. No, I love it. Yeah, I just go. Yeah, totally great. I'm like, okay.
So interesting. Brody, do you have anything to add on this topic of vulnerability?
Yeah, so that was one of my biggest struggles too, because I had grown up in a household where I felt controlled. I had this fear of opening up because I didn't want to be controlled. I didn't want to be hurt. I didn't want to lose my freedom or my power or myself. So I would keep my heart closed. And what really allowed me to start breaking through, first off, was the realization that yes, it's a risk to open up my heart, but the greatest risk of all is actually keeping my heart closed.
Mm-hmm.
Greatest risk of all is keeping your heart closed, because then nothing can happen. Nothing can change.
Mm-hmm.
It's isolation. It's more isolation. It's more depression. It's more loneliness. It's more regret and frustration. And that's what happened. My experience with keeping my heart closed, that wasn't working for me. I had a failed relationship, it didn't go anywhere. And so I just got to that breaking point of saying, like, I was just cracking open and saying, yeah, I want to live my life. I want to be connected. I want to be happy. And I'm going to risk that. I'm going to risk that I could be controlled. I'm going to risk that I could lose power. I'm going to risk that I could be hurt again. And so then I was able to start opening that up. And because, yeah, the fear will come up. And it's about changing the relationship with fear, which I think that actually we can maybe start segueing into that, because that's what I see as one of the next biggest blocks, barriers to love. That's causing some of the fear of vulnerability is fear itself. What was it? FDR said, we have nothing to fear except for fear itself, because the fear is what's going to keep that heart closed. The fear is what's going to let nothing change. We always like to say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Because by definition, for something to change in your life, you have to change, or you have to change your behavior. Something has to change. If it keeps going the same way, it's more of that comfortably miserable, where things are good. And that's another challenge we see with a lot of singles we work with. The reason why the fear is so powerful is because it keeps them being good and being fine. And because bad isn't actually the enemy of great. Good is actually the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great, because when things are good, there's not enough motivation to change. There's not enough motivation to get past the fear. Because you have to have that motivation. You have to want it. You have to want to step out. You have to want to be happy, rather than comfortably miserable. So to be able to get past that fear means that you have to be able to open up, and you have to be willing to not accept good anymore. That good isn't good enough. You want to live a great life. You want to be passionate. You want to be happy. You want to be ecstatic. You want to feel so deeply connected to your partner that you couldn't even imagine feeling more supported or more safe. That you wake up every morning just falling in love even more, being even more passionate. But you have to want that, and you have to see the consequences of keeping a heart closed, keeping that fear, not getting out of your comfort zone. What does it cost? That's also what helped me too, to see the cost of that fear. It was costing me loneliness. It was costing me frustration. It was costing me being isolated. And if that were to continue, then again, that would be more loneliness. The rest of the life would just be more loneliness, more frustration, more depression, possibly dying alone. All those things that can happen. To see that consequences of that fear running your life, that'll give that motivation to go from, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to take action. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So I'm going to do something different and get a different result and get past that fear and open up. So that's what I'd have to say about vulnerability and the relation that has to fear, the next biggest block.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So number 2 is fear of opening your heart, fear of taking the risk, fear of even doing something different and stepping out of that uncomfortable, what do you call it?
Being comfortably miserable.
Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah, so I love that. Antia, what do you have to say on the topic of fear?
Well, one thing I always say, right? We have so much respect for fear, right? Like we're like treating fear as like our parent, right? Like, oh my God, mommy said, and instead to actually reverse it and say, like I have my inner authority, and if anything, fear is like a little child, because fear is actually really ancient and it's not evolved at all, right? So it just goes from the survival mechanism, from the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy, right? That's where fear is coming from. But we are like on the 7th level of like self-actualization, and we're like, oh, like something primitive on the bottom is like has something to say. Oh, let me just go all the way back to the bottom, right? Versus like realizing how high up we are and seeing, like I always tell my clients, how
powerful we are.
Like fear is literally just like a little child, like pulling on a mom's skirt and just saying like, mommy, I'm scared. Like we can't cross the street, or, the dog's gonna bite me, or whatever it is. And, are you gonna be the mom who's just like, okay, we should be all scared, like, oh my God, right? Or are you gonna be the mom? Oh, it's okay, like you'll learn over the years that it's safe to be next to dogs, and that it's safe to cross the street, and there's going to be some rules and some distinctions you're going to learn over the years. And until then, I'll just take you on my arm, and I listen to you. See, this is the other thing too. You read all those books, kick fear to the curb, and I'm like, no, like you can't do that. It's a little child. You don't just like kick your child to the curb because it's scared, right? Because you have a relationship with it. Because otherwise it goes unconscious. and then it's really going to sabotage you. So you always want to make sure it's on the surface where you can work with it, where you have a healthy relationship with it. And that's what we do. And it's like such a powerful breakthrough for so many of our coaches to shift that whole paradigm and actually love our fear and just see it as like
clients.
Yeah, our clients, see it as something that's just helpless and just doesn't know better, right? And one example I would say is early on when I started dating Brody, in the past when I would get angry, I would just like pull away. Like I would just like kind of leave, and I would just like punish the guy with withdrawal. A lot of anxious attachment styles do that, right? Because that's how they get their power back. And that's what they do with their moms too when they're like 18 months. We saw that in the strange situation study. But anyways, so I just really I just really taught myself to just continue to lean in. Like even if I can't say right now, like I love you or I'm sorry or any of that, like to just like keep moving towards. Like when I want to run out of the door and I would just slam the door and I just want to be disconnected, right? Like to actually do the opposite and to roll towards them or walk towards them and just even if it's like really slow and just not necessarily running towards it, but and then because then it's like you connect with that person and you just feel what's the truth, versus like what the ego wants you to do is like what's the truth, and then oftentimes comes out, what, I just got scared right now, or I just didn't feel seen, I didn't feel hurt.
Right. And being able to talk about your fear is probably also really powerful in that shame, negating that shame or working with that shame so that it doesn't get bottled up. And then the other thing I love to do, and I learned this in my last relationship, is to just assume that your partner wants the best for you. And if something happens, they do or say something, it's because they weren't aware of it, because they do want the best for you, even if something else happens that looks like that's not true. Just assume that it is true.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a, that's what we always be aware of is like the intent. Never question the intent. That can be so destructive because that actually questions character. That's not just like, oh, you did something wrong in that moment, but that's actually when I question your intent, that's going to question your integrity. And for a man specifically, and that's another blind spot women have, that's absolutely emasculating. Because for a man, the integrity is his identity. Right? You want to speak a little to what's that, so that the strong masculine women actually know what's important to a masculine man.
A masculine man is going to be, like you said, identified with his character, identified with his integrity, because that's part of this structure he's built up within himself that he feels proud about, is like, I made myself into this person, I made myself into this man. And so for a woman to question that and to say, oh, you don't care about me, or, oh, you don't, you're only thinking of yourself, or, what's some other intents? You're so selfish, you're narcissistic, or blah, 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 like all these different, questioning of his character, these deeper challenges, rather than saying like, just looking at his behavior, like, why were you late? What happened? What was going on? Or why are you feeling angry? Or why are you yelling right now? What are you really feeling? Rather than saying like, you're an asshole, or you are, or that's usually what it'll be perceived by. You are blank is usually when you're questioning their intent, rather than saying, but not questioning who they are, but what they did or what they're doing and how they're feeling. Question that, be curious about that, rather than challenging who they are, because that's fundamentally going to start creating some cracks in the relationship that are going to be harder to bridge later on, and there's going to be resentments that start to build up because of that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing the guy's point of view. That sounds like the difference between telling a child they're bad versus what you did, the behavior was bad.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a totally different message. It's like, oh, just don't do that one thing, versus like, you're just bad.
Yeah, or saying like, you are selfish versus what you did felt selfish. You know, there's a slight distinction there, but it makes a big impact on how the man will receive it. I mean, neither of them will be enjoyable to receive, but it's a far bigger impact to say you are selfish versus what you did felt selfish.
Yeah.
Right. Or even better yet,
I can fix my behavior. And he may even think to himself, oh, what I did was selfish. Well, I'm not selfish. Like, why did I do that? Okay, I'm sorry. You know. But if you question he is selfish, then he'll just get resistant and say, wait, no, I'm not selfish, you know, like fuck you or whatever. Like you'll just wake up him in his anger to go and defend his character, and it becomes a lot messier.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And and then, or even, you know, my experience of the situation was, you know, so to own it for yourself instead of putting it back on the other person. These are so great. So we talked about vulnerability, fear, and then what's the next barrier that people have to live without realizing it?
I think the third one is really that common misconception that people, you know, there's like this term twin flames these days, right? And Brody and I, we released a video last month about it's something about why you actually don't want to be twin flame, because twin flames are really codependent.
Or even soulmates can sometimes have that rapid,
right? So it's like, you know, it's like really, okay, what does this term bring with it? You know, that feeds into that in that codependent theme of like, we're doing everything together, we're becoming one. Yes, that's great. And that's very needed. And there's also got to be room for the individual identity, right? Because we have different parts inside of us, and not every single part. That would be so crazy if I would expect from Brody to feed every single part inside of myself, because now we're one, right? Like that would be so crazy. And so Brody and I, we really believe in, hey, you know what? You need to feed your, you know, your wild man right now, or you need to feed your magician right now by reading. What, am I just going to sit next to him and read with him? Like, and I mean, it's just, you know, it's such a disassociation, right? Versus like actually connecting with myself and being like, okay, what's my priestess need in that moment? Or, you know, I need my sister circle, or, you know, like what juices me up outside of the relationship, so that then, you know, I can actually bring some freshness, you know, some fresh energy, some fresh momentum, you know, new ideas, new innovations, you know, even new juiciness, like into the relationship that he isn't always like responsible for creating, right? Like, and so you can continue to evolve versus, and that's what we see where people get stuck, where they just kind of become like, you know, every day is the same day because they know each other inside and out. And, you know, Brody says so many things, like he always comes up with a new quote, or I call them Brodyisms, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I never heard that before. And so like, he always surprises me. And, you know, I mean, we met almost 4 years ago, married 3, but he's still surprising me with a lot of things, how he thinks, or, you know, the books he read or stories that he hadn't even looked at from his past. And so to continue to explore each other, so to really create what we call the interdependence, right? Versus the codependence. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, it's big because it also shows up in the dating process. And that's why the anxious attachment styles can get, when anxiety comes up in the dating process, it's usually because they're still running on that kind of model of relationship. A relationship is, you know, like this, you know, you come so close to each other that you like you said, you provide everything for each other. You're like, you become one, which actually becomes a death of, because it's like the suffocation starts to happen. It's hard to breathe. Like if 2 animals were pressed together, eventually they would probably both die because they can't breathe, or eat or do other things.
When you put 2 magnets in a drawer, and after a couple of months, they will actually hurt because they lose polarity.
Well, that's what I was just going into, is that's a big piece of it as well. Why the challenge both in dating and in being a romantic relationship is because you'll lose polarity with any kind of that level of codependence or that closeness that's too close. Just like 2 magnets, if they spend enough time together, the polarization starts to go away. And so the polarization, masculine, feminine polarization, is the only thing that really causes attraction and really causes passion. You know, sexual, romantic passion and attraction is only caused by masculine, feminine energies interacting together and coming together and pulling apart and coming together. And so that polarity is reduced when the woman isn't able to go do her thing with her woman friends, or the man isn't able to do his thing and being in his man cave or whatever. So it's so key to be able to practice that from the beginning, to practice that this owning yourself inside the relationship, like protecting yourself inside the relationship and being able to set boundaries without feeling guilty in the right ways, coming from a place of love. Because a lot of that codependence also is coming from a place of fear. Fear I'm going to lose them, fear that they will cheat on me, fear that I'll get hurt again, fear that I will have to be by myself. Oh no, it's about being that balance, practicing the balance. Even with masculine and feminine polarity, we all have the masculine parts of ourselves, we all have the feminine parts of ourselves, but we have one that's primary, and owning your primary energy, because it is all about energy, that's what's going to help create that polarity and being able to cultivate that. So as a masculine identified person or a man in a relationship, to cultivate your masculine, to protect your masculine, to grow your masculine in it, or as the feminine identity in the relationship, to cultivate your feminine, to do those feminine activities, by yourself, to take the bubble bath, to go, spend time with your girlfriends, or to go, just read a book or just dance. I see Antia sometimes. I'll come into the office and she'll just be dancing in front of them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is such an important topic. And I think, one of the things with codependence is the idea, like the underlying idea, the unconscious idea that you need to make me happy, and so that's, I think, what ends up creating, first of all, we're so in love, so we should do everything together, which is kind of a Hollywood stereotype, maybe a twin, the whole soulmate thing. And then secondly, my happiness is derived from you versus my happiness is derived from me and what I'm doing in my life. Yeah. And then we can be the icing on each other's cake.
Yeah. It's really important that it comes from your own turn on. I mean, sometimes I'm just like turned on by my own body, and I just adore myself. And then Brody just sees that, and like, it doesn't matter if he's like here or he's not here, right? But he's like, oh, you love yourself. And then it turns him on even more, right? Like how turned on I am by myself and by all the different parts of inside of myself and my own juiciness. I think that's really important. And having said that, especially in the beginning dating process, because, some single women are going to listen to this and they'll be like, well, great, you're telling about relationships and how does that help me in dating? Is that when you have like a great experience, like again, a guy I dated in the past, he had a sailboat and, and there was Sunday and he's like, hey, let's go sailing. And, it's sunny outside and it was summer and whatever. And I realized I have to say no to that, because if I can't make it an enjoyable day without him, that's just as much fun as like going out with him sailing, because I had gone out with him sailing before, right? So it wasn't like the first time. Then it's a codependence, and it's actually not a true like interdependent relationship or dating experience, right? Then I'm already like attached to him, and he's already my source. And, obviously he became more attractive. He said, oh my God, that was the day where I became so attracted to, when you said, oh no, I'm going to spend an Antia day today. Because he was used to women are like, sailing? Yeah, heck yeah. We're sailing, Catalina Island. Right? And so, and that's really what I learned, is that to just always, like, even when I notice, like, I become too attached, or I make pretty responsible just a little too much for my happiness, right? Because it happens. We have all different parts and different parts even of our menstrual cycle, right, ladies? To be like, wait, you know what? Like, I actually think I need to spend a day with my girlfriends, or I just need to actually go on a walk, because I realized, like,
go to a workshop, work on myself.
Because this younger part is like attaching herself like onto you right now. She's like starting to become like cling onto you like an anchor, right? And so I'm like, I need to figure out what it is inside of myself that I need to source, and then come back full to Brody, and then I can share, hey, what's coming up for me was, experience I had, in the past or whenever it was. So, and that's the third piece with the interdependence, is it provides perspective. Like, if you're always together 24/7, you always become each other's self-fulfilling prophecy and every expectations, right? You can basically read each other, versus like, pulling away and just being like, what's going on? Because it's not about my partner. It's like, last night I was angry, and he's like, what are you angry about? And I said, I'm angry at my dad. Because it was something that happened that easily an unconscious woman could have said, I'm angry at you, or I'm angry at our team, or whatever it is, right? But I realized right away, wait, And that was it. And then I just go on a little excursion with myself and see what specifically that was about my past.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So you have both mentioned attachment styles a couple of times. Could you talk briefly on that, what that is?
Yeah, totally. Especially because we come from opposite spectrums. So why don't you go first?
Yeah, and one thing I'll say just about the last thing Antia mentioned too is one thing we always tell our singles too is if you want someone to commit to you, you have to first commit to yourself and commit to going for what you really want. And that, because that's going to require making those changes, taking those leaps, getting support, getting new strategies. And so you have to just really like, you know, commit, put that ring, you know, commit to yourself and say, I'm going for that. I'm going to change this pattern inside myself. I'm going to start doing the work, getting that outside support, whatever it takes, the new strategies to do this work on myself to get to that place where I can have a healthy relationship and not have it go the way it's always been. Because we have in our Find One Summit, a workshop we did just a couple days ago, actually, we have our participants do an exercise where they list out their past relationships and see what are the patterns, what are some of the patterns, how long were these relationships, why did they end, what did you, how were you contributing to that? And then to be able to see that, it's like, oh, I have a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of areas of improvements. It's nothing has to be fixed. It's just how can we improve? How can we bring out that gold inside of you and get rid of the old blocks, those old patterns we're talking about to get to where you can have that love. But
and really like teaching, it's saying like, you know, Richard Branson has this one saying, it's like, screw it, let's do it. Right? Like this like self-trust, because that's what you expect from the other person too. I mean, they just get to know you and you want him, you know, or her, if I'm assisting, you know, to say, okay, I trust, you know, I want this relationship, right? So him or her, they have to get to the point too where they're like, okay, screw it, let's do it. Let's just go for it, right? And see where it leads.
Yeah, so I think that is the barrier, like you said, that is the huge barrier with this whole process is the attachment styles, and more of like what I was talking about, the patterns, the attachment patterns. What have your relationships been like in the past? Why didn't they go anywhere? And knowing that and starting to work on those patterns, because there are the 3 different attachment styles that we work with, which is the anxious attachment style, where you're more anxious and your relationships, you question more, you're always getting stuck in your head rather than in your heart. You know, we like to say, get in your head and you're dead, get in your heart and you're smart. Because when you're heart,
write that down.
Write that down. It's a tweetable. Because when you're living from your heart, you're much more connected to your intuition. You trust that bliss more. You follow that. And so, and then
also anxious attachment styles live in future anticipation
and fear, usually fear of future outcome.
As if they live like based on a reflection that's outside of themselves, that's on the wall, but it has nothing to do with the current reality. It's just like an idea, it's an illusion, right? Yeah. And they live in this extreme experience of tension, because there's this tension of the reflection on the wall and who they are in their body and the actual reality. Like, okay, I've gone on 3 dates, right? And not like, oh, I could walk down the aisle with him or whatever, right? And I've gone on 3 dates, we had coffee, whatever, and not make it mean that much. And then, so what's interesting is that I was actually an anxious attachment style. And again, and that's the constant working to notice like, oh, there's a part and I need to learn to nurture, you know, and it gets easier and easier.
Because you studied this at UC Berkeley.
At UC Berkeley, under Mary Ainsworth, yeah. And then Brody was an avoidant, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah. So that was the avoidant attachment style is like, I don't want anyone to get too close. And that's where I was coming from in my history, because I had been, not wanting to be controlled and keeping the heart closed. So, so if we hadn't been able to heal that, if we hadn't worked with our mentors and done all the coaching and the workshops, everything we did, we would have been each other's worst enemy when we met each other. I would have been pulling away more and more. She would have been grasping more and more. And we just would have both drove each other crazy. So, and we did have some of that still lingering when we met each other, but it was very minuscule because we had both worked on each other, on ourselves, to get it to that point where you become what's called the secure attachment. So where we're more open, we're more available to be in a healthy interdependent relationship and to be able to be together, but not having to push the other person away. Oh, don't get too close, and not having to also grasp, I want you more close, I want you more close. Like, please just come closer. So it's in that balance again, the balance we talked about, to be in that secure place. That's what we help a lot of our clients with, to get in that place, because it take a lot of work and a lot of these old patterns are coming up that get in the way of that. But that's really the ultimate goal, to clear out those barriers.
And I think the fatal thing is, Marcy, that, you know, when an anxious attachment style meets an avoidant, you know, she thinks, oh, he's going to turn around. Like he's going to change. He's going to, you know, if I just like stand on my head and you know, learn how to drink at the same time and bend over backwards, and, you know, he'll learn, you know, he'll love me, right? And so, but it's never going to happen, because the avoidant is a totally inconsistent communication, and it increases her anxiety. And when she meets like a secure, and that's the blind spot, right? When she meets a secure, it almost feels boring, because there's no tension. There's no this like, you know, this anxiety inside of her, which she mistakes as excitement.
Or as attraction.
As attraction.
We call
That
it,
is so fatal.
I call it
right?
attraction anxiety.
Attraction anxiety, yes. And that's really what it is, because, you know, they even have done those, the research where they had, you know, a man go over like a really wobbly bridge where I thought, oh my God, I could die. And then at the end meet a woman, and then based on like how wobbly the bridge was, actually scale on 1 to 10 how attracted they were to the women. And the more the man was going through, and with women you can do the same thing, was really, you know, going over a bridge that like, oh my God, I could die, the higher the attraction level was on the scale, right? So we really proved very quickly that attraction is mistaken by, you know, by anxiety.
And attraction get easily mixed up.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's where you basically train your system to be like, no, you actually do not want to go for somebody you're immediately attracted to, right? You actually want to go for somebody who probably feels more like a calm sea, like a pond. You know, like I always say, you know, where can you see to the bottom of, to the bottom of like a wild sea, and there's like waves and storm, right? Or like a calm pond. And it's of course the second one. And that really shows you how deep the relationship can go with a secure.
Okay, yeah. So this attachment style information, when I first learned about it, was so pivotal for me, just understanding why the patterns were the way they were. So thank you for talking about it. I'm wondering if, you know, the anxious attachment style is fear of rejection or abandonment, and the avoidant is fear of engulfment, like losing yourself. Is that how you look at it too?
Yeah, you will definitely hear that more and more. And also, you know, what's interesting is with the avoidant attachment style, and it's a blind spot that they're not aware of, is their story is, I will just know. Like, I will know the first time I meet this person, and it's so basically they make it so unrealistic that it's brilliant. It's a brilliant strategy, right? Because they tell themselves, like, I'm dating, I'm going out, right? But, you know, no, I didn't feel it, right? So they're not really going deep, right? They're just like, they're very judgmental, and they're very quick to move on, right? And to be, ladies, if you're dating guys right now, we're just like, you know, you talk to them and then a day later they'll call you back and say, you know, their phone died. That's an avoidant, right? You know, a consistent is like Brody. I mean, he told me I'm the girl of the story. And then, you know, he called me like once, twice a week, like nothing too crazy, right? And just invited me out once a week somewhere where he was going. And so that's what I mean. It was very consistent. You want to watch out for the consistency of someone you date. And, you know, I'd rather recommend biting in that sour apple sooner than later, because, you know, you can identify very early on if you're dating an avoidant. And ladies, he's not going to turn around. He's not going to turn around.
Yeah. Only person that can turn around is yourself.
Yeah.
By becoming a secure.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest breakthrough for me was when I realized when a man wouldn't call me back, that was my biggest turnoff. I knew right away he's not my soulmate. And now it's the biggest breakthrough, right? And so that's what you really want to get to, like that healthy standard that, like, if a man that gives me any of those reasons that don't make any sense, you know, to just done. I'm not interested anymore. Such a turn off. My pussy just dried up, right?
Yeah. Okay, great. So we talked about 4 barriers to love. Is there anything else that we haven't covered?
So I think the last, and then you can add on to that, is shadow. Because we have this like idea everything's going to be so great and everything's so wonderful, right? And especially for the anxious attachment style, because they've given their power away all day long and all life long, really. Like when they feel safe, that other part inside of them comes out. When they actually become the bitch, or they actually become it could even be slightly verbally abusive, and like the real emotions come out, right? Explosiveness comes out. And one thing that Brody and I did before our wedding, we did a shadow ceremony for that reason, to just really give space for all those parts that have been suppressed in order to attract the right man, or in order to appeal to the right man, or in order to accommodate the right man, right? And all of that was like given space, and we acknowledged each other's deepest, darkest fears, judgments, and even now we love our shadows. I mean, we really do, and talk about them. And I'm excited when I see other people share their shadows. Oh, you're selfish. That's great. And it's such a freeing experience. Oh, you have pride, right? It's such a freeing experience for them, because they've been judging it their whole life and expect other people to judge it them. And so if you can give that gift to your partner or to yourself, like to become just curious. I'm like, oh, why would I be selfish? Or why would I be, whatever, greedy or whatever it is, right? And just have that compassion and ultimately actually that excitement for that part, because there's so much gift in there. There's something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, I would say I think shadow has to be linked with communication as well, because they go hand in hand. Because without
not that he speaks from experience, right?
Without the communication, and the communication is a huge barrier, you can't manage the shadow, because the shadows will stay in there. It has to be communicated. It has to be communicated properly. And that's where we see so many singles that we help struggling with, is not having those communication abilities, the skills to manage to navigate that when those shadows come up in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do it at the workplace, but the romantic relationship, all these different emotions will come up and the shadows will come up. How do you navigate those? And yeah, that is why we had a shadow ceremony before our wedding, where we shared our deepest fears going into the marriage, and to be able to do that and have tools for that in the relationship in general, when you're having those feelings of fear, of loneliness, of regret. And starting with yourself, owning those shadows within yourself of the disappointments, the times when you felt lonely, when you felt sad, and struggling and frustrated by this whole process and not having the support to be able to move past that and be able to build the skills to communicate first with yourself properly, but then to be able to communicate in your dating with the man in a relationship as well, to have a harmonious connection. And also one thing with that, I'll mention just when we're talking about our marriage, when we married each other as well, this is all related to the interdependence and everything else. We said, with this ring, I set you free. And so that's a powerful realization, I think, and that was for those who have those fears coming up of being being committed,
being trapped,
or being trapped, or all those other fears. Again, it's about working with the fears. You dance with the fears so you can still take those steps forward to have a happy, amazing life, and being able to take care of that part of you that does get afraid. So reframe it. That actually a relationship can be the key for you feeling more freedom, more happiness, more aliveness, more power, more success, more health. Every area of your life can go up with having that amazing partnership in the right way and with the right skills. Actually, it is the gateway to a happier life. It is the gateway to experiencing that joy in all areas, because many studies have been done that it's almost impossible to be fully happy when your relationships suck. Especially your romantic relationships. Yeah. Many studies have been done. Every other area can suck, but if your relationships are sucking also, it's just going to pull everything else down.
Yeah.
And when your relationship is awesome, it's happy, it's lit up, every other area of your life can be, whatever, and you're still happy. You're still like, hey, my life's pretty great.
You're like, sales went so great this week. Oh, I just, I got sick, but it doesn't matter. My honey was there.
Feeding me. About it together, and so that support is key because we're social creatures and we grew up needing love. Babies need love to survive, so it's a critical part to
absolutely
have with
you.
Yeah.
Oh, so much good stuff here. Thank you so much for sharing. So as barriers for love, we talked about vulnerability, fear, and then codependency, the attachment styles, and then shadow. I'm so curious to hear from both of you. Who do you work with as clients? How do you work with them? If you could just briefly mention that, because I know a lot of people here today with us are curious about that, and possibly can tell that in their love life they could really use some support. So could you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Want some of that juice.
Yeah.
Take it to the next level.
How can I continue to turn myself on? So for those of you who are really, struggling with trust issues, attracting those emotionally unavailable men, we just identified who they are in case you didn't know before, and just in general, you're just really identified with that, right? You're just really having a hard time being vulnerable. You might don't even know what vulnerability means, right? So all of those challenges we talked about.
Or just lonely and having those old patterns, seeing those patterns that just keep coming up and wanting to stop that, wanting to do something different, wanting to get out of being comfortably miserable, to have that happiness, that support, that safety and joy, that lit upness in relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. Who doesn't want that?
Very lit up, yeah.
Who wants some of that? Yeah. So for those, we really created our Find the Right Partner Clarity sessions. That's 1 hour with me or 1 hour with Brody, depending if you're a man or a woman.
Yeah,
and
woman with Antia.
Where we really go deep, because we just said, one thing we need to identify, what are the relationship patterns, right? Where would it go, things like left the track and the trail for you, versus staying on track on self-love and staying congruent, right? So we really look at, where are you incongruent? What are the conflicts inside of yourself that lead to that self-sabotage?
The subconscious conflicts,
behavior, right? And what attachment style are you, right? So all of those pieces we identify. And also we see, where you're not really, believing that what you really want, your grand vision of love, that it's really possible. Where you're not really connected with that, right? It's like, there's so many misconceptions. These are also those fairy tales. And I was always made fun of for having my fairy tale, right? So where's that kind of jadedness, skepticism inside of yourself, to fully connect with that? So that's what we're going to identify. Exactly. And then really identify what structure is best to move forward with for you to really become congruent inside of yourself, right? And align, so you attract this amazing, not this amazing, but a man.
Similar to this amazing.
Sorry, lady. But women ask me all
I'm
the
here to
time,
help. I'm here to
do
help.
you have a brother, or I need a Brody? I was like, oh, you want a Brody? Okay.
We have connections.
Yeah. So that's what we identify, how it makes sense to continue.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. So let me ask you, is this for just single people, or for people who are in a relationship that's perhaps struggling, or they know it could be better?
Yeah, if it's women who are in a relationship and they're really resonated with the blind spots that we talked about, because you can be in a relationship and not even be aware that you never addressed this. Or I'm like, oh my God, my relationship was totally codependent. Absolutely. Yes. And so if that really resonates with you, it's a 1 hour, about 45 to 1 hour long phone call with me. And you can go to meettheboyds.com, because our last name is Boyd. So
versus Meet the Boys. The boys.
And get yourself scheduled on that calendar, and really make sure you fill out the application. We have a flood of applications come in every single time, and we make sure that it's really filled out. And again, we said, you have to commit to yourself first. Yeah. And we really want to see that on your end too. And that really makes sense for us to even, help you out with this,
or
right?
The only way it can help is if there is that commitment, yeah.
Exactly. So if that resonates with you, get yourself over your cutie booty over there as soon as possible. I'm already booked for the next 4 weeks. So you just really want it right away. You want to get...
Yeah, and the other thing about it is a $495 value for that session, but we're going to be offering it with this interview totally complimentary as our gift. It is an application process, so we don't do the sessions with she doesn't do it, I don't do it with everybody. But with coming to our website and going through the application and saying that you came from Marcy as well, it's totally complimentary as our gift.
That is so amazing. Wow, that is so generous. Thank you so much. So I'm going to have a link for everyone. Fill out the application, and like they said, be complete with the application because you want to get selected. You don't want to miss out on this opportunity. So, and I love what you said, both of you, about being committed to yourself, like really having that strong commitment. And that's the first step in the process and moving towards what you want. So thank you so much, both of you. Amazing information today. I'm just thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, it's been so great to have you.
It was so
you on the juicy journey, and yeah.
You guys are awesome. Any last words as we close up?
Well, do you want to talk about Jeff Bezos?
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, one final tidbit. I mentioned this at our last workshop, our event that we did. But Jeff Bezos has an interesting framework for looking at your life. And when he was deciding, Jeff Bezos was a founder of Amazon.com, and he said when he was deciding whether he should leave his safe job or go on this, take the risk of starting this company, Amazon.com, he used this framework he called the regret minimalization framework. Being a nerd, he came up with this, and he said, looking back on your deathbed, if you have two choices, choice A being to stay where you are right now, nothing changing, being comfortably miserable, or choice B is to do something new and to go for your dreams, what you really want, that's going to make you happier. Back on your deathbed, looking back, which choice is going to give you the least regret? Which will reduce the amount of regret you will feel on your deathbed, looking back in your life and imagining what choice you made. And to make a choice from that place, in all areas, with your dating, with your romance, when you're having that fear come up and you're wondering if you should step forward into it and do something uncomfortable or stay where you're at, which will give you the least regret back in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, staying where you are or trying something new. And that can usually make it a lot easier to take those risks that we talked about. So, I would love to support you. Meettheboys.com. And do you have any other final words?
That was perfect.
Regret, minimize the regret. That's the key to life. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Antia and Brody Boyd. And to everyone who joined us here today at the Cutting Edge Convention, thank you for having a commitment to yourself. Take the next step, use the link. Apply for one of these limited sessions and hopefully you'll get one. And I will see you next time on the Cutting Edge Convention. Have a happy day.
Bye-bye. Much love.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being part of the Cutting Edge Convention. We don't want you to miss a single valuable session. To have the entire event available to you at any time, purchase the package now before the event ends. That's when the price goes up. And watch your emails to get your next steps from Marcy.